To a Sky News exclusive now, Qantas is trying to stop one of the world's biggest airlines being granted permission for more flights to Australian cities. Qantas has told the federal government the Qatar airline company has breached an undertaking on existing routes. The submission to the federal government coincides with a court case by 5 female passengers who claim Qatar Airways breached their human rights. Adam Walters reports.
Sky News can reveal Qantas is pressuring the federal government to reject an application from Qatar Airways to double its access to Australian cities. Qantas is opposing Qatar's application on commercial grounds, believing its plans are unfair as non-government owned carriers rebuild in the post-COVID travel market. A senior Qantas source has told Sky News the Middle Eastern carrier has also defied a bilateral agreement to include Canberra on a route to Melbourne by flying directly to the Victorian capital.
So to be in breach of the bilateral air surface agreement is certainly not a good look.
As Qatar prepares to host the next Soccer World Cup, aviation law expert Professor Ron Barsh says its airline will be under more scrutiny than ever.
You'd want to do everything to assure the travelling public and people travelling into the Middle East and into Qatar that they can have a high assurance that they're going to be treated safely and humanely in the circumstances.
Just 1 month ago, Qatar Airways was voted the world's best airline for a record 7th time, a reputation thoroughly undeserved, according to Professor Barsh. He can't believe how the airline could preserve its image as 5 Australian women sue Qatar Airways and the country's Civil Aviation Authority for subjecting them to gynecological inspections or intimate physical examinations without their consent in October 2020.
I guess the most important aspect is that the shocking and deplorable behaviour of the airline and of the country at the time. And what surprises me mostly is that there's been very little done either domestically or internationally to address the situation 2 years after the event.
In this interview with 60 Minutes, a nurse from Victoria told of her distress after being ordered off a plane into a waiting ambulance.
I just remember thinking, this is so uncomfortable, I don't know what's happening. But I stepped up into the ambulance and there was a female in there. And all she said to me was this one line of, "A baby has been found in a bin and we need to test you."
Another woman, 73 years old and legally blind, was also directed towards the ambulance by the armed guards, but ultimately not required to enter. Their lawyer, Damien Sturzaker, said the applicants have all suffered significant mental distress due to the events, with 4 of the 5 already receiving psychological treatment.
And I remember looking outside and they had thin blinds on the windows and I could see out, so all I was thinking is, can all the men out there see in? That was where my mind was at that point. And she just asked me, "We need to remove your pants." And I remember thinking, this is bizarre, like why am I having to remove my pants?
Yes, take off your pants, take off.
So I pulled them down and she goes, "We need to remove your underwear." And I said, "I don't feel comfortable with removing my underwear." And I was physically holding them up and she's like, no, they need to come down. I was like, I don't.
The group's legal team is now demanding Foreign Minister Penny Wong deliver on her demands as a shadow minister when she called on the Morrison government to release a Qatar government report into the incident.
I think the Australian government's got to take a greater lead in this. There doesn't seem to have been too much diplomatic pressure applied to Qatar.
The court action comes as Qatar Airways and the state of Qatar, on behalf of its Civil Aviation Authority, continue to deny liability for the treatment of the Australian women while refusing to meet them to discuss compensation. Adam Walters, Sky News.